Yeah, so years ago when you first opened, obviously there's an amazing facility here, but it's not always been this. I remember reading about trees coming through the floor and everything like that. But now, yeah, gym owner, author, black belt, world class coach. Um, Along that journey that you've been through, looking back now, is there anything that you would do differently on the path that you've done?
Yeah, it's always tempting to think, oh, if I'd have done this earlier, I would have got here sooner. But honestly, it's been a great journey. I know it's a cliche, the journey is the destination, but it has been. And it really makes me appreciate every time I walk in here, I always just wanted a warm, clean, dry gym. And it took me a while to get there. Even this little room we're doing the interview in, this was actually the size of my very first gym. And in a room like this, we had like 16 guys, 18 guys sparring together, you know. So every failure has been a failure up towards success. And I've had 10 gyms in 20 years, so I'm averaging a move every 2 years. But this one I'll be taken out of in a box. I'm never moving from here. So yeah, no, I wouldn't actually change a thing, even though it might have got me some places a bit quicker. I'm glad of every mistake I made, every slip, every failure. It's all worked towards getting to me where I am today, and yeah, I wouldn't change anything.
Absolutely. So I've followed your coaching journey. I've loved coaching for years, and that's what I studied at university. I actually wrote my dissertation on yourself and your coaching style years ago, like 8 years ago. Yeah, I'll find it. But one thing that I noticed was throughout coaching, it seems very separated in a lot of places, that you come in, you get coached, and then you go home. But I've noticed that the coach-athlete relationship that you have with a lot of people is like outstanding in the regards to the norm. I know you look after fighters and help them bring through, and it probably changes their life more than just combat sports. Is that something that you initially wanted to bring forward, or was that just something that kind of happened? The sense of, that coach-athlete relationship that you would build and helping fighters if they're in sticky situations and all that kind of stuff.
I suppose I don't know if it was a conscious decision, but seemed obvious to me early on. A big part of this game is trust, and you're training in Renegade now, and you know with big gyms, sometimes fighters will go there thinking there's some secret, some easy way to get somewhere. And I always tell people that come here just for a week at a time that you're going to get something out of it. You know, you're moving around with decent level training partners, but it's not really going to get us anywhere from a coach-fighter relationship, that you have to make certain calls in a fight, split-second decisions, or maybe a shot is called for. And if you have any sort of doubt, that moment might pass and it's not there now. So my biggest thing with fighters is that, of course, the technical training has to be there for all ranges. But above that is the trust element, and that goes beyond what happens within the gym. You probably know yourself that as a coach of a group of young men, you become more than just a coach. Sometimes you're almost like a big brother or a father figure now as I'm getting older. You're a psychologist, you're helping them with their finances. So you do end up becoming very intertwined with their life beyond the four walls. But I kind of feel that that's needed, so as that they build that trust. So on fight night, if there's a split second call, they will go with what you say. So trust is number one.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you say, that's so important inside of the fight, that you've got this peripheral vision outside where you can see everything going on, and maybe they're in the heat of the moment and you need them to respond at that time. And that trust element is so important, right?
Yeah, it's like I'm always so blown away by what you did today. I thought was incredible, fantastic. Because for me, the grappling side of MMA is so much easier to teach. Like, it's all set positions. You're stuck underneath the mount. There's techniques to get out of the mount. And you don't need a massive sense of timing for that, because it's a set position. But for what you're trying to pass on today, it's all fractions of seconds. That it's just as that moment is open, you've got to go. And if you don't have that real strong bond with a fighter, it's not going to be done in weeks, maybe not even in months. I think it really takes years before that happens. That if there's a fraction of a second of a call, there's no hesitation that it's just done.
Instant.
So I'll keep coming back to it. That someone does come in here for a 4-week training camp, and will you corner me? I won't be any use to you in the corner, because you're not really gonna.
You don't know them.
You don't know. You know, it can't be bought. It has to be earned. It's only time on the mat, and it's only doing the amateur career with them and going into the pro fights, and you know, probably realistically, it's sort of a 10-year journey. Like someone like Lee Hammond, that came here is maybe he was 11 or 12 years of age. Now he's mid-20s. Then you get that real bond.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know you have like an array of fighters of all different personalities, all different, the way they react to things. And like you're saying there, that trust. When you're in the corner, you'll know how this person needs to respond, what they need to be told. Like some people need...
Maybe how to motivate them as
Exactly, right? So all of those things. If you just come in with one cookie set of thing and it's like you just scream at them, but they're somebody who needs clarity, step-by-step decision, you don't know that unless you know that individual. And I think they're such important bits in the coaching role, right? Is knowing how to motivate them, how to keep them in the fight, how to keep them composed and everything like that, which is crazy.
Yeah, one thing I love to do is get an up-and-coming fighter to corner with me. And I kind of get from how they are either screaming at the guy or talking to the guy or, you're going to whoop that guy's ass or tell them that you're the best in the world, so either appealing to their ego or their technical ability. I kind of am learning, okay, that's how you like to be cornered.
Yeah.
So it's sort of an interesting way of kind of beginning to understand their personality because, like you said, if you just go in with only one tool and maybe that's not how it works for them. So again, it's one of those things that over time you sort of learn how it is that you're going to be able to get them through tough situations, which every fighter will be in.
Yeah, that's a wicked way to be able to do it, is like put them in the state of stress, which
subconsciously,
subconsciously,
that's what you like, okay.
Yeah, subconsciously it's going to bring it through in that moment, right? So then in terms of that, like, fighting wise, you can have world-class athletes, but sometimes when they get under the lights, it's a whole different scenario, right? And preparation, I remember reading in your book about preparation, everything is obviously going to build the confidence, but sometimes people still will have a single seed of doubt, which will like make them heavy and lethargic. Do you think that's something that, because in my experience, I've trained people and they've done everything they need to do, but still they're world-class operators, but as soon as they're in there, they still can't switch it. Do you think that's still something that can be changed at the highest levels under the moments, like still being able to remove that doubt no matter how much work they've done?
Short answer, yes. So in our sport, especially at the pro level, you might only have 2 or 3 times a year that you're underneath that level of stress. And I think it'd be a massive mistake if that's the only time the athlete feels that. So I like to use the example of if you want your muscles to grow, you must stress them with lifting something heavy. But if you go straight away and you try to squat 200 kilos without having built up that it's too much stress on the muscles, something's going to give. I think the mental stress of competition is something that has to be almost done, maybe not daily, but certainly weekly. So a big thing I do here is all my fighters must set up, we have I'm blanking on the word, where we basically have like a mock fight.
Fight simulation.
Fight simulation, yeah. Thank you. A fight simulation at least once a week that they do the rounds outside of class time, not with 20 people on the mats, but just with 2 in the cage. Maybe their teammates are watching it. And I tell them I'm not too worried how the spar goes. It's more that I know that day you woke up going, okay, I've got to walk into the gym today. I'm going to be watched. I've got to step up into those steps. We have a raised octagon. I've got to walk up to those steps. There's going to be some eyes on me. I've got to try and do my techniques under a stressful situation. So I think if early on that becomes somewhat normalized, as much as it can be. And then on the other side, you can go into the local grappling tournaments. The part of the brain that deals with stress doesn't realize if you're getting ready for a street fight or an MMA fight or a grappling tournament. It's the same feeling. So it's something that it's very normal as humans. We want to avoid stress. That's completely natural. But I try to get that early on change, that we're not getting used to stress. You're getting used to handling excitement. We're going to be excited tonight. It's not a negative anxiety feeling. It's a positive excitement feeling. And I just think there's no way around it. It's the same with wanting muscle growth. You have to stress your body. And if you want mental growth, you have to stress your mind. And there's very real ways of doing that between fight simulation, lower level grappling tournaments. Even sometimes I'll pull someone up in front of the group and say, now just describe the technique you were doing there. So that bit of public speaking, bit having to do it. We actually recently had a very high level fighter visit. And I asked them, actually, could you just step up there and show what you're doing? And he completely froze, couldn't get words out.
Yeah.
So keep putting yourself in mentally stressful situations, whatever that might be, and that will build that resilience, build that mental strength for when you are that twice a year or 3 times a year, doing it in front of millions of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always think the same thing. And so many people will avoid it and almost be like, or I'll just wait for the night and maybe it won't come. And then sometimes they can perform, sometimes they can't, as opposed to being like, I will absolutely feel these feelings. Let me deal with how to deal with those, like you say.
The very physical techniques of what you were doing today, or grappling techniques. Why don't we just avoid training them and just hope it happens on the night?
Exactly.
We train the physical side of techniques, so let's train the mental side of techniques.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not rocket science. There's ways of doing that. We all know there's situations where we feel that stress hormones start to be released. So it's uncomfortable. I do a little bit of dog training on the side, and that's a big part of it with dog training, is that you put them in manageable stressful situations. But as soon as they're used to that, you have to take it up a level.
Yeah.
You can't just stay on that level. And with weightlifting, once that stress no longer gets a adaptation, well, the stress has to go up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that keeps on going, right? And that's where the build of the comfort level is. So then those training methods that you're talking about, I remember when I first see the cage with the audience and everything like that. So you're almost like putting in these new training systems and, like you say, bringing out this emotion so you can feel that. As MMA has grown over the years, like you say, you was part of it very early. I was only 15 years ago when everything was like NSAC and amateur and semi-pro and everything like that. But obviously it's changed over those years. What do you think is important that we carry on changing? So like you say, you've got the cage, you've got the audience, you're replicating these mental components of the competition. Is there other things that you think that we need to almost focus on to like elevate the sport?
I think IMAF has made a massive difference to the MMA landscape because, like you said, back in the day, someone did 2 or 3 amateur, and then it was just assumed you were going to go pro. I think Kieran Clark is a great example of someone that did maybe 35 amateur fights. So that's something that someone, I'm 2-0 as an amateur now. When's my pro debut? And it's like, no, you're going to be there for a while. And the pro game is not going to be for everybody, because a big part of the pro game is the entertainment side of things, and that's not comfortable for everybody with a microphone in your face. So these are all things you've got to get used to if you want to make money a pro. And if you're not really in it to make money a pro, I would say, well, then stay amateur. Well, I don't want to do interviews. I don't want to do this kind of thing. Well, stay amateur then. And the IMAF gives you a great pathway. You can represent your country, your European championships, world championships, and I'll have plenty of fighters, a lot more now, that have a good amateur career and then call it at the end of that. So I would say what the biggest change I've seen is that the amateur game now has real, it has weight behind that. You can, stick on your country jersey. And I love the IMF internationals. You go away, you see all the different countries and their flags, and it has a really nice kind of sport feel to it, as opposed to early on just the Saturday night show with 300 drunk people, kill him. Yeah. So I would big advice I'd say for somebody is stay amateur for as long as possible. Make all those mistakes Kieran had. I can't quite remember his record. It wasn't 50-50, but probably almost as many losses that he has wins. And then when the time is right, he went over, and now I think he's 10-0 now as a pro. So I think that's the way to do it, And other sports, whether it's wrestling or kickboxing or jiu-jitsu, it's normal for them to have maybe they only stay amateur and you get so much experience. And I just see that in MMA. Sometimes people rush that transition from amateur to pro.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, kickboxing, you fight like every weekend and stuff like that. And that's where you see, especially Thai boxing, they rack up these 300 fights and then you see them so composed. And that's where they're able to just find flow and elevate. And
we talk about Conor, like in his early days, his coach was famous for having these Thursday night boxing shows. It's in a local boxing show, a local boxing club. No big, light shows or walkouts, but he knew every Thursday night. Like I think in his first 2 years of amateur boxing, he had 50 or 60 fights, and the Crumlin boxing show was famous for, it's a bit of a cauldron. You go in there and you only find out on the day, you're against that guy. Oh, he's 10 kilos heavier. Well, look, that's the only guy that's here, right? In you go. And then, like you said, you're building up forget about the technical side of it, which is important, but you build up that mental resilience of doing your techniques under a stressful situation and dealing with losses, not falling apart because you have a loss with a few hundred people watching you. That you just see that loss as the win or learn attitude, that it's a learning opportunity, and that you're going to take all those lessons, physical and mental lessons, to bring to your pro career if that's where you end up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all changed from those kind of things like the record becoming almost like the boxing model, where it's the loss is so important. And for me, it's like it almost kills the thing, because that now they're just striving for this record as opposed to like the art of competition and things like that, right? Which is heavily to do with social media. I think is another massive part of the fight game that's almost changed it. For yourself with like social media, because obviously if you have like a captivating athlete, you will come along that journey, and then I imagine you get bombarded with messages and comments throughout the thing. Like, how do you then deal with all that? Because I know a lot of people, even the social media side, like the attention there will crumble them. So it's not even anything to do with anything physical. They will like crumble from, not crumble, but they just hate that aspect, and it builds so much, this illusion of pressure that just doesn't exist. For yourself going along the journey and maybe getting messages 24/7, how do you deal with all that kind of stuff?
But just on that specifically, like I have I used to do mental message of the week. I've stopped doing that. I do it every now and again. I'll screen capture something just for fun. Yeah. But like most things in life, the situation is rarely the problem. It's how you interpret it. And for me, I just see it as being given my team great opportunities. I've got great relationships with most of the main organizations, so I can maybe help them get somewhere a little bit sooner than if they were on a small team with no social media presence. So I only see the positives of it. Is there crazy messages in there? Yes. Is there sometimes death threats and stuff? Yes. Yeah. You just ignore them. That just comes with the game. In terms of the athlete dealing with that build up of pressure, that is where the conversation comes in, that I tell them, look, you can either interpret that as being a positive. There's more people looking at you, more sponsorship opportunities, more offers from big shows. But if it's getting too big, stay amateur. And then none of that matters. No, at the IMAFs, there's no post-fight interviews, and there's no, well, if I call this guy out, I'm going to get a better opportunity than if I don't. No, if you win, you progress to the next level. And so, it's purely about purely meritocracy, if you want to say. If you just keep winning, you'll become the IMAF champion. In pro MMA, it's a little bit different. It's not necessarily that you just have to keep winning. You've got to keep winning with a certain level of style, and you've got to have a little bit of personality. And I don't think that should be forced. I think if that's a bit natural to you, if you enjoy putting on a show and you have a little bit of a wit about you, well, guess what? Put that with a skill set, with some opportunities. Maybe your team has a few opportunities. That's where somebody can get to a position where they can make a living from fighting.
Yeah, and especially that pro model, like you say, that's kind of how it's gravitating at the minute, right? With like everything building and the social media. But I feel like, sometimes you see people force this model, and you can just see straight through it, right?
And I've always said that to fighters: don't fake a personality, because fight fans are psychic about that stuff. And I was sort of lucky early on. I had two fighters who were at a good level that had completely opposing personalities. If you think of Gunnar Nelson and Conor McGregor, very, very different people. Gunny wasn't going to try and be Conor, and Conor wasn't going to try and be Gunny. Conor's just that kid. We all remember him in school. He was the guy at the back that had a quick answer to make the teacher look silly. And Gunny's that stoic, almost Fedor-esque way about him. And both are appealing to fans, And so I would say to fighters, if trash talking, if having those witty replies is in your nature, great, build on it. And if it's not, well then, you better be good at fighting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you know Asiel. You've seen him on the mat. He's Algerian French.
Right.
He'd be one of the sharpest guys. I've seen you with him a few times. So he's somebody strict Muslim, very, very respectful. But I have noticed, and I didn't tell him, he started doing it himself. Him and the black kid, Naomi, you were talking about, they're best friends.
Got you.
But when they spar, it's like if somebody was watching, they think, geez, they hate each other. The trash talk just starts.
Yeah.
And wasn't my suggestion, but I've started to say to Asiel, if you build on that a little bit, and if that's a natural thing to you and you enjoy it, guess what? That's probably going to get you a bit more fans than if you just go in with this, sort of like zero entertainment mindset. So it's kind of funny to see that's been a natural progression from him. I might see a spark and then turn that spark into a fire, as Kus would say. Yeah. But if I had a different athlete who just would never talk, well, I wouldn't suggest it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing, right? That it's like the whole mental component. So now it's not skill set, it's like you're playing with the psyche of the fighter, which is a whole nother thing. And for me as well, like being able to talk in them situations is only gonna like reaffirm composure. So if you're composed in that moment and you're relaxed and you can speak, if like you say, when you had someone come forward and it's like explain this technique, but they're so overwhelmed they can't get a word out, that's like a clear indicator that it's like, okay, they're not composed. But the more that you can go through that and the more relaxed you are, that you can actually have a conversation with somebody, maybe that's only imprinting that like composure, right?
Yeah, and you heard me at the end. I announced that Luca is going to teach a class on Thursday. So Luca is, I know that's going to stress him probably more than his Saturday night fight. That English is not his first language. He's never coached here. All the eyes are on him. Any little mistake you make is amplified. So I just threw that on him. Now he's going to have restless nights getting ready for Thursday's session. But again, it's just building that mental strength.
That same stressor, right? That we're just going through things like that. Like I say, I've read through the book and the win or learn model. I think it's great, and that's what I'm saying. Even with the pro thing, it's a shame that it's becoming so focused in on that zero and the undefeated records that you almost it's win or you get thrown to the back of the queue. But outside of all that, is there like a piece of advice that you would give forward, maybe even not sport related, over all the lessons that you've learned over the years, to whether it's a younger child or someone coming up or something like that?
Yeah. So I've sort of had waves of fighters, guys joining in their teens, doing their amateurs, some of them go on to pros, and then they hit that kind of mid to late 30s where it's near retirement from, say, professional competition. And what I'm trying to do earlier and earlier with guys is to start getting them building their, what I would call, well, I didn't phrase it, but their talent stack. So that if something was to happen to end their fighting, that maybe they can slip, you have a great presence on the mat there, whether it's slipping into coaching, whether it's some go into motivational speaking. And there's great networking opportunities in fighting. You might get to know certain promoters, you might get to know certain sponsors. Maybe you're working with a sponsor and you start speaking to them about, look, I've got 2-3 years left in this, and then is there a position within that company, whether it's an ambassador role or I can do a nighttime course. I tell the guys, look, realistically, we're doing 2 intense 90-minute sessions a day, which gives you a lot of free time. So keep building on that talent stack. Probably in all maybe there's been 1,000 odd fighters over the last 20 years. Of them, I mean, there's one that has retirement money for sure. Maybe 1 or 2 other got a house out of it. But, don't be thinking that I'm going to hit my late 30s and then figure out what's next. So start early on thinking, well, I enjoy doing privates, I enjoy coaching, I enjoy speaking. I'm starting to work on other skills that will be transferable when this opportunity, which you do have to build a certain following, starts coming to an end in fighting. Be ready for the business world. Don't be spending your money on shiny shit and buying Gucci slippers. Keep your cash, get an investment property, something along those lines. So I'm trying to get those conversations started earlier with guys, that they have a bit of an exit plan ready.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like I think that's great, because I try and have the same conversation with youngers coming up, but there's almost like a culture of, no, this is it. But where you say we train maybe 2 90-minute or 2 2-hour sessions, that's 4 hours in your day. You've got so much time outside of that to be able to build into whatever you want. But sometimes the culture is like, no, this is it, and that's everything. But like building off into those other opportunities, like you say, there's very, very, very small percentage of people that can then just go, cool, I'm done, and then just exit. Everything else ain't as pretty as what it seems on Instagram, right?
Yeah, and there's a quick way of saying it, and it's something I'd really, any young fighters listening, really pay attention to the words I'm using, and that would be useful. Be useful. Be useful in your gym, to your coach. Be useful to promoters. Don't ignore those emails asking for your medicals. Be useful. Early on, build a reputation in the ecosystem that we work in as being useful. And trust me, with the way younger people are these days, useful people are hard to find. So be useful, and I promise you, opportunities will start to open up.
Yeah, 100%. Wicked. Yeah, thanks for your time, John. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah,
Much
perfect.
appreciated.